like to call the Planning and Zoning Agriculture Committee to order Wednesday, June 17th, 2020. Roll call, please.
Mr. Featherling?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Mr. Washington? Mr. Tholen?
Here.
Ms. Polk?
Present.
Mr. Payton?
Here.
Ms. Peters?
Present.
Ms. Dunbar?
Present.
Mr. Kinzinger?
Here.
Mr. Fairfield?
Present.
Mr. Smith?
Present.
Mr. Sponson?
Present.
Mr. Dunnell?
Present.
Mr. Long?
Present.
Mr. Wheeler?
Present.
Mr. Searay? He stepped away, but he's there.
Yeah, he stepped away. He's here, but
He's here, yeah.
see the empty chair.
All right, we have a
Your
quorum.
desk. We have some public comment today, so I'll be calling a few folks here. If you'll bear with me. First call is Ron O'Connor from 5000 Road, Kankakee. He's a property owner.
Hello?
Hi, is this Mr. O'Connor?
Yes, it is.
Hi, it's Andy Wheeler at the county board. Got you on speaker. Got you on speakerphone here. Let's get a test here. If you could say something, want to make sure we can get you live here.
Turn on the gas.
Just say your name and your where you live.
Hi, I'm Ron O'Connor.
One more time. Sorry.
Hello, I'm Ron O'Connor.
Okay, I think we got you now. It helps if I do what I'm supposed to do and turn the microphone on.
Okay.
They've told me that recently.
That's fine.
So yeah, I appreciate it. The floor is yours.
Okay. Well, hello, I'm Ron O'Connor. I know I've got a lot to cram into a short period of time here. I don't want to take up a lot of your time, but the biggest fact that I want to express this morning is that I live a quarter mile from this 35 acres that I'm applying for a special use permit. I have been inspected by the Illinois EPA, Air and Water Divisions, the Kankakee Soil and Water Conservation, the Kankakee County Health Department, the Illinois State Police, the Kankakee County Sheriff's Police, the Limestone Fire Department, the Kankakee County Highway Department, the Limestone Township Road Commissioner, and the Buckeye Pipeline. Every one of these agencies have inspected what the complaints they were brought to my property for, and some of them multiple times. And not one time has there been a violation or a ticket written. The Illinois EPA has given me suggestions to consider to reduce the neighbor complaints. And to date, I have followed every one of them. Asphalting the first 400 foot of my entrance, installing Bitmax material on the driveway that is gravel to reduce the dust, installing a water system on the crushing equipment, planting 750 evergreen trees to have a natural vegetation border between the neighbors and I, and now working with the county to become in compliant for the business that we do. I've approached the county, not the other way around. There are countless businesses operating within a few miles of my property that are not zoned correctly, and some of them have operated for dozens of years. I'm really not sure how you fix that fairly. The business that I've built for the last 14 years on this property has become a need in our community. I'm trying very hard to offer a service and yet be respectful as possible to my neighbors. This is why I want to become compliant with the Kankakee County. I believe if you listen to the facts of this case, you will see I have cooperated with all governing bodies. That is my future intentions as well, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good day.
You too. Moving on, we have Kyle Fondran, an attorney. We'll be calling just to... Let me try another number that's on here that's crossed out. We do just want the facts, though, right? Sorry, it was right there.
Clever.
Your call cannot be completed as dialed. Please.
Oh, sorry. It's an 847 number on that one, and I dialed 815. If we have to extend a couple minutes after this, I may ask the committee to do so.
Kyle Bonjamy
Is not available to take your call. Please leave a message after the tone.
I'm going to try the first number one more time to make sure I didn't fat finger it, and then we'll move on if that's not the correct number.
Victor Sheldon Jacobs.
Yes, Kyle Fondren, please.
Kyle is not in the office today. Would you like his voicemail or?
Oh, Elliot Wickstra.
Okay, he is here. Give me just one moment, please.
Good morning.
Yes, is this Elliot?
Speaking.
Hi, it's Andy Wheeler, Kankakee County Board, and you are on public comment. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Good morning, everybody. I'm Elliot Wickser. I'm an attorney. My office address is in Northbrook, Illinois. I represent Mr. and Mrs. Larry Sheffer, the owners of the property located at 274 South 5000 W Road, Kankakee, Illinois. I understand that this is just public comment, so I'll keep it to that. I do want to thank you for your time today. As we know, there's a request for two variations. The property for the property situated at I have it described as Section 17 of Limestone Township. I think we're all familiar with the property at issue here. I'm particularly focused on the request for special use in my comments for the special use permit, and we think it should be declined. And I just want to go over without, again, public comment, just I see strictly what's in the record based on the testimony of the petitioner and based on the testimony of the several property owners. So I say this for about approximately 3 years, the property at issue has been used as an industrial cement crushing facility. Make no mistake about it, the property is being used for a high intensity industrial use, but in an agricultural district. Based on the testimony and comments from the board, the Planning and Zoning Board, it does not appear that this petitioner has the right to use the property as such, as no special use permit has ever issued for this particular use. The Zoning Board voted 3-3, as you know, regarding the petitioner's application. Again, based on public comment here, we think the vote really should have been 6-0. It's clear that based on the testimony at public hearing that 150 trucks, according to the petitioner now, enter and exit at a minimum on this property. And we're talking about semi-traffic truck. The trucks come and go, and on the weekends, despite, there's some debate about that, but despite, whether it's weekends or not, and despite the petitioner's attempts to keep dust from kicking up, dust continues to kick up. There were pictures presented at the hearing that the trucks make noise in an otherwise country setting. It is clear that the neighbors, all the neighbors who testified, they complained of loud noises, vibrations from the petitioner's activities on the property. There's burning of material that's happening.
The petitioner uses front loader tractors to dump the cement in the semi-trailers, making loud noises. Dump trucks come in dumping and picking up various cement pieces for crushing. There's constant dust and smoke and noise from the activities of petitioner's business. As I mentioned, the trucks are loud. The local roads, we don't see any right to use the local roads for this type of industrial traffic. All of this information, as I mentioned, is contained in the record before the Plan and Zoning Board. The petitioner's request for a special use permit should not be granted for two reasons. First, the petitioner really did not provide any evidence at the Zoning Board hearing that the property and the use, the high industrial impact, can meet the standards for the issuance of a special use permit. And quite honestly, the record reveals that that they can't meet it unequivocally. The standards cannot be met. And without belaboring it, I think you all know what the standards are, and there are several. The establishment, maintenance, or operation of the special use will not be detrimental or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare. To the contrary, it does endanger public health, safety, morals, comfort, and general welfare. The property owner and all the adjacent property owners to the petitioner's property all testified, again, that there's 150 weekly parade of semi-trucks kicking up dust, dirt, creating noise, smoke. It's a public nuisance in an agricultural country-style atmosphere. The parks are, the trucks park sometimes on the roadway. The roadway's being torn up, as I mentioned. So we think that you cannot, the petitioner has not met item one. Second, the special use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity. I think it's been clearly proved that it will. There's been testimony that dust collects on people's houses from the, and I don't know what's in the dust. No one knows what's in the dust. And even if it's not harmful, it's still, emanating from the use of the petitioner's property. It's a heavy industrial cement crushing business. The noise is horrendous based on the record. The dust from the cement crushing operations, as some of the respondents' neighbors have said, it's just unbearable. I've already talked about the loudness of the traffic, the diesel fumes emanating from the property, and somebody testified that the trucks throw up dust, ends up on their house plants, their grass, their driveways, etc. And somebody also testified, one of the neighbors, that they can't even open up their windows when these operations are going on. And again, I mention this because it's all in the record. Three, the establishment of the special use will not substantially impede the normal orderly development and improvement of the surrounding property. No person's going to ever want to develop any property next to this type of use. I really think that if you have a buyer, homeowner that wants to buy one of the neighbor's property, I think they're going to look at this type of use and there's just no way. The adequate of utilities, access road, drainage, or necessary facilities have been or will be provided. Again, focusing on the roadways, they're just not made nor allowed for this type of heavy-duty industrial type of business. Adequate measures have been or will be taken to provide ingress and egress. I think I've already mentioned why that is not happening, so I won't belabor that point. And finally, number 6, that the special use permit in all other respects conform to the applicable regulations of the district in which it is located, and that's not at all clear from the record. The petitioner claims that the EPA has passed on the use of the property, the pollution, the noise, the diesel pollution, truck traffic. The only evidence of that is the petitioner's testimony. We don't know if there's a safety hazard to the other homeowners or other adjacent homeowners who are not even aware of the application for this special use permit. So in the end, as I think clearly, the petitioner cannot meet the standards for the issuance of a special use permit, as I've outlined above. Even if it was a close call, it's not. The negative impact to the adjacent neighbors is so great that the request should be denied. And really, finally, just one little item I want to mention. The current use of the property is so far removed from the county's comprehensive plan that for that reason alone, the petitioner's request should be denied. And that's all I have, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Take care. The next up was Joel Slutsky. I believe that's the doctor.
Hello.
Hello, is this Joel Slutsky?
Yes, it is.
Hi, this is Andy Wheeler at Kankakee County, and we have you on public comment.
Okay, good.
The floor is yours, sir. Go ahead.
I don't have any question. I was just wondering, you know, how if anybody has any question for me.
No, this is public comment, sir. It's for you to make a statement only. There are no questions or
Okay.
answers. Sorry.
Well, I mean, I submitted plan and question to
You need to state your question to the committee, sir. I apologize. You need to. There are no questions that will be answered. It's
Right.
only your statements. That's what public comment is. So if you have statements about the proposition, then that's what this is for.
Okay. Well, this property that I have is contiguous with my home. It was a separate lot, and I'm just saying, at one time it was listed as a detention property. That was changed, and the water drainage was placed to the north of the lot, past the property line, and I've owned it for at least 25 years, and I'd like to just sell it.
Okay. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Take care. Next up is Brian Scott. We're ringing Brian in. Oop, sorry.
Hello, this is Brian Scott.
Hi, Brian. It's Andy Wheeler at the Kankakee County Board. You're on public comment. Floor is yours.
Good morning. My name is Brian Scott, and I represent the petitioner in ZBA case 1915, Ron and Sally O'Connor, on behalf of Municipal Bank Trust 2583. My client has been a local businessman in this county for over 35 years. He supports the local economy and other local businesses that would otherwise spend their money outside Kankakee County for the services he provides at the location of his business. This business, while located in an area zoned A1, is located along a street with at least two other businesses that are non-agricultural related. One is an auto body shop. The other apparently fabricates storage tanks for a variety of purposes. My client, after opening his business and working with the IEPA and the EPA, learned he should ensure his business was properly zoned and undertook this process with the desire to ensure he legally operates his business. During this time, he has worked to be a good neighbor by attempting to remedy neighbor concerns and issues along the way. Throughout this process, all he has wanted is a fair process that has reviewed facts to grant him the sought-after special use permit to operate a heavy processing facility in this location as permitted under the A1 zoning ordinance. While my client has acknowledged his mistakes along the way during this process, these mistakes are a far cry from the many false accusations and baseless claims made by some to prevent him from obtaining this permit. My client continues to work hard to ensure he minimally intrudes upon his neighbors while working at his business. This is evidenced by the conditions he has volunteered to place on himself to obtain this permit. Nevertheless, as you listen to concerns raised by neighbors, please remember to focus on the claims made and the facts and evidence that do not support those claims. In spite of the many statements that would lead you to believe otherwise, my client has and continues to be in compliance with both the IEPA and EPA. The facts, which include letters from Road Commissioner and the Fire Department and others in this case, should be closely scrutinized to come to the conclusion that my client wants to operate a legally permissible business under the zoning ordinances specifically the A1 zoning ordinance, with conditions to ensure he does not offend his neighbors. He would like to continue to operate lawfully under both state and federal law to ensure both his livelihood and the businesses in the area that rely on him. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Alrighty, moving on. The approval of the minutes for May 20th, 2020. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Mr. Featherling, second. Mr. Kinzinger, I believe. That'll be a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Tholen?
Aye.
Ms. Polk? Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Ms. Peters?
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar?
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger?
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Sponson?
Aye.
Mr. Dunnell?
Aye.
Mr. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Moving on to the building report. It's in your packet. Is there a motion to approve building report? Mr. Long is second.
Second.
Mrs. Polk. Yeah, if you want to run through it, Dell, real quick. See if there's questions.
Sure. The building report for May of 2020, we issued 94 permits with a valuation of $4.9 million. 3 of those were new homes and brought in total revenue of $37,901, which was a very good month for us. That's almost double what we brought in May of last year if you factor out the large CSL bearing permit that was issued last May.
Any questions on the report for Dell? Roll call vote then.
Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Tholen?
Aye.
Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Ms. Peters?
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar?
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger?
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Mr. Dunnell?
Aye.
Mr. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Moving on to ZBA case number 9-15, request for a special use permit. Number 24D, heavy processing facility in the A1 agricultural district on a parcel generally situated section 5 of Limestone Township. Petitioners Municipal Bank Trust, 2583, property owner and applicant. So we can, I guess, start off. Is there a motion on the floor to start with to approve?
I make that motion, Mr. Chairman. I'd also like to add a couple of stipulations to it for the special use.
Let's make the motion. And what are the stipulations that you are looking for?
I'd like to go with the staff recommendations on that. ZBA recommendations for the special use permit limitation.
Okay. Del, could you list those recommendations before we get into explanation for the sake of the motion? I think it's appropriate.
Yeah, I have them on a slide, and actually there's been a few slight changes to that since the one I sent out 2 weeks ago. I'd like to go over those if you wouldn't mind.
Please.
Okay.
Yeah, I see what you're doing, John. You don't want to do an amendment vote, so you're trying to streamline this, and I get it.
Yes.
Is there any way to flip to the presentation real quick?
I'm going to switch over there.
Just for the sake, we have a motion, and we're going to get what those stipulations are. Then we'll see if there's a second based on that. So bear with us for a second.
Give me just a minute because I got to get down the to where that's at, and then I will switch my screen over. Okay. And I should be able to share screen. Should be this one. Can everyone see that?
Nope.
Oh,
Nope.
hang on. How about now?
Something's happening.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Since the zoning board was unable to make a recommendation on this case, staff made some recommendations or some recommended findings and some conditions on it for you to consider. It is totally up to the board whether they would like to accept these. It's certainly write your own or come up with your own. But under finding number 1, which is that the establishment, maintenance, or operation of a special use will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare. Taken from the discussions from the Zoning Board of Appeals, they found that it will not be detrimental to the health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare, but that the testimony did indicate that property owners in the immediate vicinity of the operation may be affected by dust emanating from trucks entering and leaving the property. So the following 2 conditions were placed on it. 1, the operation must maintain all required permits from the IEPA, Kankakee County, and other agencies at all times, including a valid ROS permit, and must comply with all directives issued by the IEPA. Keep in mind, since I didn't go through the testimony, one of the suggestions by the IEPA to minimize dust was the application of a Bitmax, it's called Bitmax material, to the driveway, and Mr. O'Connor did pave the first 400 feet of the driveway to keep dust down. So that was one of those type of directives, and he did do both of those. In fact, that was all done before he even applied for a special use permit. Secondly, limiting the location on the property where this can occur. The processing and storage of materials is limited to, the processing of materials is limited to the rear 1,000 feet of the property, and the storage of materials will be allowed in the rear 1,500 feet of the property. This is not even half the property, actually. Can you see a map on your screen? No, I guess not. I'm on the wrong screen. So,
for the sake of the motion, can we get through what the amendments are, please?
Oh.
We need to handle the motion and then get into discussion.
Okay. Well, those 2 conditions there, those are the conditions that Mr. Fedling was talking about. That's 2 of them. On the second finding, there are 4 conditions. Hours of operation for processing and shipping and receiving at the facility shall be Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Saturday from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. There's a limit on what can be processed. Only used concrete, brick, rocks, uncontaminated soils, clay, or similar materials in accordance with the ordinance related to the special use permit shall be accepted at the facility for processing. So that limits them to just what they are currently doing. Open burning shall be permitted on the rear 1,500 feet of the property, and a speed limit of 10 miles per hour shall be imposed on all vehicles operating on the property, and signage will be placed along the driveway indicating the speed limit. So that's 4 more conditions.
Is that all of them?
Nope.
Okay.
We're still going. There's 6 findings of fact, and there's conditions on at least 4 of them.
Okay.
I think this might be the last one. Under finding number 4, the property owner shall cause a drainage study of the property to be conducted at their expense to evaluate the effects that elevating the property has had on the surrounding neighborhood. This study shall be completed within 24 months of approval of the special use, and any improvements or changes to drainage shall be completed within 24 months of the date of the completed study at the owner's expense. Once the drainage study is completed, the county planner may hire a third-party reviewer to review the study for compliance with proper engineering practices. If this review is required, said review will be at the expense of the owner as well. And I think that is all of the conditions.
Okay, so are those the conditions to your expectation, Mr. Featherling, with your motion?
Yes, they are. He covered the findings that needed the changes, or the
I can go over all the findings too, if you'd like.
We'll do that after we get to the motion. Is there a second to Mr. Featherling's motion to start with?
Dunbar.
It's Ms. Dunbar with the second. Now we can get into your presentation, Del. Sorry we had to do it that way, but that was the way the motion was made. So
not a problem. Not a problem.
It ends up saving us coming back and doing multiple amendment votes,
Let me go back to the beginning here.
if that was the intent, because that's what I
Start from
did.
the beginning. About 2 weeks ago, I sent all of you a large packet. I think Kelly did, actually, I didn't do it. Went out to you, which had all of the evidence, all of the testimony, the transcripts, and basically everything I have on this case. So I wanted to make sure you had plenty of time to review it. So you have all of that. If you have it with you, you can follow along. We'll be going over some of that. This is a request for a special use permit for a heavy processing facility in the A1 Agricultural District. Because it is a special use permit in the A1 Agricultural District, it is considered an agricultural use, not an industrial use, as some people have alluded to. It is a use that is allowed in the district, but because it's a special use, and because of some of the mitigating circumstances and some of the issues a use like this might create, it's a special use so that the board can take a look at it and institute conditions to mitigate any issues that it might bring up. Currently, the property is used for the recycling of used concrete. Concrete is crushed into gravel, and the rebar is removed and recycled. They also recycle soil and clay. It's screened to remove rocks and other foreign materials, and then the soil and clay is sold as pulverized dirt. I don't know what they pulverize the clay. The facility has been operating without approval for a couple of years now, and Mr. O'Connor came to us stating that he wanted to be legal. What did he need to do to make that happen? So that is why we are here today, as a result of his application. The what happened? Okay. It's a 33.85 acre parcel. It's zoned A1 agriculture. It's located on the west side of Van Siding Road in Limestone Township. The recycling operation occurs to the rear of the property. A large, almost 20,000 square foot pole barn sits at the front of the property. There are several buses located on the property, and we have notified the owner that he is not applying for a junkyard. The buses must be removed. There are several shipping containers located on the rear of the property, and he also uses the property for agricultural purposes by raising bees and pumpkins on the property. And I have witnessed at least the bees. I have not witnessed pumpkins, but when I was out there doing my site visit, there are beehives on the property. Here's a map of the property itself. Mr. O'Connor's property is outlined in red on this map. It's a large parcel. This aerial photo was taken before the pole barn, was built, so I outlined the location of the pole barn in green. The operation occurs at the back area of the property where the orange or yellowish colored circle is. Just north of there is some storage of materials. The closest home to the actual operations is 1,610 feet away. If you remember the conditions that were recommended for this, you see the pipeline running kind of north-south through the property about midway up. 1,500 feet does not even make it to that point. So all of the operation for this would be well behind that line. We had multiple public hearings. One December 9th, there was a vote 3-3 with no recommendation. December 18th, we took it to PZA, this committee, and you chose to send it back to ZBA for more deliberations. On January 13th, we did not have a quorum at ZBA, so the case was continued. There was no testimony heard that day. And March 9th was another public hearing, more testimony, which most was just reiterated from the previous one, and the ZBA vote was 3-3, still no recommendation. There were several objectors at the hearings. Their names are listed up there. I don't know if I need to go through all of them, but they are nearby, either adjoining or nearby property owners. ZBA did not make a recommendation, so there are two choices for this committee. You can make a recommendation to the county board yourselves and develop your own findings of fact, or you could send it back to ZBA. That is the choice of the committee. I can tell you there's probably no guarantee you would get any different outcome from ZBA by sending it back. Pertinent testimony. Whoa. Pertinent testimony for, okay. I think I need a new mouse. There we go. Let's try that. Pertinent testimony on the case. One of the objections is that there's been open burning occurring on the property, and the objectors have alluded to that and stated that the fire department had been called out on several occasions. If you look in your packet, Exhibit E is a letter from the fire chief stating that there have been no calls to the property that have indicated any illegal burning. All of their calls, either burning has occurred within the legal parameters that you're allowed to burn, or with one incident where there was an accidental burning. One of the buses caught fire. I believe it was a lightning strike. It was either a lightning strike or somebody working on the bus. But anyway, it was determined that that was accidental. Exhibit B is a panel from Mr. Schaefer with pictures of alleged burning. A photo of the panel is on the next slide. Oh, sorry, it's not on the next slide because that's in the exhibits. That's Exhibit B. There's Exhibit B. It's going to be hard to see on this, so if you can follow along on the packet that you have. Some of the, which one's the one from Exhibit burning, unknown refuge, degradation of roads. Some of these pictures indicate his evidence for burning on the property. I'm not seeing which one offhand right now, but that was part of Exhibit B that Mr. Schaefer submitted. Going back to this. Now, Mr. O'Connor contends that the burning on the property consisted of landscape waste generated from the property, and he's within the law to burn this waste, which if that is true, he is. You can burn waste that is landscape waste that is generated from your own property, providing you're not doing it within 1,000 feet of a municipality. Another objection is road issues. The objectors believe the trucks utilizing the property are causing damage to the road. Exhibit F is a letter from the Township Road Commissioner indicating that they have had no issues with Mr. O'Connor's use of the roads for his operation. Fire department issues. Objectors also stated that, oh, did we hit that twice? Open burning. Something's not right here. I apologize for this. This is a little, let's go to dust. Various photos, especially in Exhibit B, show that dust is present during the operation of the facility. To counteract this, as I said, Mr. O'Connor has paved the front portion of the driveway and installed bitmax on the remainder per IEPA's recommendation. Went over the road issues. Fire department issues, we already cut. Oh, fire department issues continued. Objectors also stated that they believe trucks waiting to enter the property are blocking access to the Limestone Township Fire Department, which is about a quarter mile north of this site. Also in that letter from the fire chief, he states that this is not an issue for them. Drainage and stormwater issues. Objectors believe site improvements to the property have caused flooding and stormwater issues. Mr. O'Connor has done some filling and some site improvements on the property without a stormwater permit. He did not get a stormwater permit, which is required from our office for those activities, which is why there's a condition on the property or on the approval to do one after the fact. Basically, a drainage study would be performed, and he would need to make any improvements to alleviate any drainage issues that are discovered, if there are any. They have, objectors have provided photos of standing water, but the source of that water is inconclusive. There are a fair number of natural wetlands in the area, and those could very well be photos of those. Neighborhood land use. Objectors have contended that the neighborhood is a residential area. The area is zoned A1 agriculture. There are scattered small and large lot residential uses in the area, plenty of agricultural uses, and some commercial or business uses, as was alluded to in the public comment. So it is a mixed area of uses, but it is zoned for agricultural purposes, not residential. Environmental concerns. The objectors have claimed that hazardous waste has been buried on the property and that various activities of environmental concern have occurred. The operation has a valid ROS permit, which is a regulation of smaller sources from the IEPA. That permit gets monitored. There are inspections that occur. I do not work for the IEPA, but I have not seen any reports that anything has been found out there that would be of a hazard and outside of the guidelines of the ROS permit. Plenty of exhibits on this case. We went all the way to R, which is very unusual for us. There's a list of all of the exhibits, and all of those were distributed to you about 2 weeks ago. I can go through some of the pictures here and put them up on the screen. Exhibit B was several boards with photographs on it showing trucks entering and leaving the property, dust on the property, and some general photos of the property. And I'll just slowly scroll through these, give you guys an idea to look at them if you don't have it, you don't have your packet with you. There are some photos here of the operation. As you see in the upper right corner of this particular slide, there's it's like an end loader with the in the area of the finished gravel. There's a board that shows some liquid trucks that entered the property and unloaded. Mr. O'Connor testified that that was water to water his pumpkins. The lower pictures show the standing water across the street, which is also a natural wetland. So as I said before, it's inconclusive as to whether that water has anything to do with Mr. O'Connor's operation or if that is just a natural occurring situation there. They show pictures of degradation of the roadway. The Township Road Commissioner does not seem to have any issues with how the roadway is being utilized. There's some more pictures of trucks. Exhibit B here, this is photos of some of the piles. There's a pile of concrete waiting to be crushed. There's a pile of clay and dirt on the left. The middle picture on the top is the photos of the buses. As I said, those need to be removed. And some other general pictures of the operation. Exhibit C was a photo of, or is a map of an aerial photo, very old aerial photo of the location, and 2 wetland maps of the area around it. It's hard to see in this particular photo, but you can see there's a fair amount of wetlands in that area. Exhibit G is a map that was provided that shows the distance to the nearest homes from the operation, closest one being 1,610 feet, and on this map, the farthest one being 2,800 feet away. Exhibit I is some photos of, some more photos of the operation. Those were submitted by Mr. Schaefer. Exhibit J. Just another board with more photos on it, indicating trucks, dust, and some photos of the operation. Exhibit Q. These are pictures of a nursing home in the city of Kankakee that was demolished, and the concrete was taken out to that site for processing. I think some of the brick too, possibly. They did have the proper permits from the IEPA to do that, and the truckloads were tested for contaminants. And now we get to the findings. I did not have a slide of every exhibit up there because some of them just, such as the letters, did not bode well for putting on the screen, and I figured you could just read those yourself from your packet. So that's why there's not all of the exhibits were on the screen. Getting to the findings, I already read the first finding earlier when you were making a motion, but so I won't redo that one. But that is for the establishment, maintenance, and operation of the special use. Suggested finding number 2. Number 2's finding, and these are the standards, that the special use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted, nor substantially diminish or impair property values within the neighborhood. Finding for that is the board finds that the subject property and the area surrounding the subject property is zoned A1 agriculture. The board further finds that the operation's distance from adjacent homes, coupled with the fact that the property is nearly surrounded with mature trees and agricultural fields, that the enjoyment of adjoining property is not unduly injured, provided that the hours of operations are limited. In addition, the board finds that no evidence or testimony has been presented to indicate property values will be impaired within the neighborhood. And while the objectors have said that their property values are going to be diminished, there has been no study or no evidence provided to show that that is the actual case. So to turn any negatives on this into positives, the conditions were placed on there. Keep in mind, a zoning case, special use permit must meet the standards. Part of the way in a special use permit where you can meet the standards is by putting conditions on that so that the standards are met. Suggested finding number 3, that the establishment of the special use will not substantially impede the normal and orderly development improvements of the surrounding property for uses permitted in the district. The answer to that is the board finds that the subject property and the area surrounding the subject property is zoned A1 agriculture. The board further finds that the development of surrounding properties for agricultural purposes and uses permitted within the agricultural district will not be impeded by the establishment of the special use permit. Number 4, that adequate utility access, roads, drainage, or necessary facilities have been or will be provided. The board finds that all utilities needed to operate the facility have been provided, and that an access road or driveway has been provided to access the rear of the property. The board further finds that there are no identified drainage issues on the property. However, the property may have been elevated over time through the use of fill, which may have caused an adverse effect on the drainage in the area in general. The board also finds that all necessary public facilities have been or will be provided. The board shall apply the following condition upon approval of the special use permit to alleviate this situation. And that is the condition that a drainage study occur after the fact. Number 5 is that adequate measures have been or will be taken to provide ingress or egress so designed as to minimize traffic congestion in the public streets. The board finds that the owner has provided a 33-foot wide entrance at Van Siding Road to accommodate truck movements into the facility, and that an access road has been established on the property. The board also finds that this access road has been paved for the first 400 feet, and that Bitmax dust control is used on the remainder of the access road. The board further finds that the Township Road Commissioner has provided a written statement in the form of a letter indicating that truck traffic to and from the facility has not been an issue for the road network. And number 6, that the special use will, in all other respects, conform to the applicable regulations of the district in which it is located, except as such regulations may, in each instance, be modified by the board. The board finds that the applicant is not seeking any variation to the county zoning regulations in regard to this request. The board further finds that the special use permit will comply with all aspects of the Kankakee County zoning ordinance and all conditions placed upon the special use permit. The board also finds that the conditions placed on the special use permit will require the special use permit to be in compliance with regulations beyond those imposed by the zoning ordinance. And those are the findings. And that's my presentation.
Thank you, Del. We'll start off, we have the motion in the second, so we'll have questions for Del about any of this, if you need clarification on the evidence that was presented. You see that, but we obviously, I want to draw attention to the fact that we need to consider evidence and not hearsay. So, to the board, any questions to Del?
Question.
Mr. Chairman?
Is that Mr. Featherling?
Yeah,
Yes.
I wanted to add the responses to our findings that added to be my motion complete. I forgot to add that.
I couldn't hear you. You kind of broke up there, John.
I'd like to add the responses to our findings from staff as a recommendation. Findings of fact.
Okay, so the mitigation, your original had just the recommendations or the stipulations, if you will.
Right.
You also wanted to, so this is in the form of an amendment to add the recommendations of staff to the, hold on just a second.
I want to add the responses to the findings, Andy.
Add the responses to the findings?
Yes.
Just a moment, please. We good? Okay, sorry about that. We had some internal stuff in the room here we had to fix. So with the original person who made the motion, is that acceptable as the motion is originally presented? Ms. Dunbar, is that acceptable with you, that becomes the motion?
Yes.
Okay, so then we won't have to do an amendment. We'll just, you're restating your motion, including those recommendations?
Yes.
From staff?
Yes.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay, we'll move on to questions then.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
question for Del. I drove that site, looked at it last week. Very neat, well done. And I noticed a new building that may or may not be complete. It must be that 19,500 square foot building that must have been built in the last year or two. I noticed that it came before this ZBA committee first time in December. On what basis was that building built? Was it for agricultural purposes, or how was it stated, and what design code was used when it was approved?
It's a pole barn, so pole barn codes were used for it.
That'd be agricultural.
I believe the purpose was agriculture.
So it was designed under agricultural codes, not commercial or manufacturing codes.
Correct. It was built for the code for agricultural pole barn.
Very good. Thank you.
Other questions for Del?
Over. This is Ray Fairfield.
Go ahead, Ray.
These board findings that we're suggesting, were those done by the ZBA?
They were not. They were suggested by myself. The Zoning Board of Appeals was unable to make a recommendation, therefore did not forward any findings to you.
So you've got a 3-3 vote, but you're saying these findings were suggested. Who were they suggested by?
They are suggested by me for your consideration. Okay. Since the Zoning Board did not make findings, either the Planning and Zoning Committee needs to make their own findings or send it back to the Zoning Board for them to make findings.
Okay.
I don't think sending it back to Zoning Board is going to get much of a better result. So to help the Planning and Zoning Committee, I suggested findings. You, by all means, can change them any way you see fit. That was just a starting point for you guys to start with.
The other question I have, they have, according to the suggestion, you're saying they have 24 months to do a study, and then another 24 months after the study's done. So you're talking 4 to 5 years before this water issue is been taken care of, right?
It could be, but realistically, a drainage study like that could take 12 to 18 months.
So the people that are dealing with this,
to do the study.
they have to deal with it another 4 to 5 years before, even if they find that there's an issue, then how long is it going to take them to
Well, then once the study is done, they would have another 24 months to complete the improvements.
I just think that's too long.
Well, I don't know how you could necessarily speed that up. It takes time to study it, and then it would take some time to
It took him years to
repair that.
It took him years to change it. Now it's going to take another 4 or 5 years to possibly. That don't make any sense to me. So I understand where
We don't. We are fairly sure that it has changed. We do not know that it has changed in any detrimental way. So the study may very well show that nothing needs to be done.
But he didn't. He changed it before he was supposed to, right? He violated some.
He should have had a Class 2 stormwater permit to make those changes, in which case this would have all been done before those changes were made. That didn't occur. So
Thank you, Delbert.
the best way to make sure it gets done is to put that condition in there that forces him to do the study. Now, that study is going to take some time, and if there are any improvements, they're going to take some time to do.
I have hopefully a quick question, a follow-up on that, Del. What are you able to determine when elevations changed? Do you have any aerials or any mapping from a date that shows it was one thing and then it became something else?
Unfortunately, no. We have the topography that was created in 2010 on the GIS. It's I think it's 1 foot contours, so we can only see an elevation change of 1 foot or more. Unfortunately, we have not had new topography done that we could compare it to.
I see. Okay.
So a survey would have, an elevation survey of the property would have to be conducted, and then we could compare it to the old elevations and see what, if any, changes have occurred.
Okay, thank you. Other questions for Del, please?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Long?
Question for Delbert. Do we have any evidence, or I'm not familiar with the EPA licensing and that. Have we actually seen a permit from them to operate this type of facility on the property?
It's Exhibit A.
So the Ross permit is all he needs?
Yes.
And can you kind of give us a short version of what that entails?
No, I'm not 100% familiar with that, with the EPA's processes on that.
But there certainly are some limitations that are imposed by that Ross permit?
I believe that there are. I would have to read the Ross permit to know that. I do not know the ins and outs of a Ross permit. It's not a permit that I issue.
Also, Del, are you familiar with any history of the property? I'm pretty sure that used to be a borrow pit for limestone. Do we know anything else about that property?
What I know of the property is that former owners have used it for various uses that involve the moving of dirt, possibly the dirt rock, possibly similar to this. It has been used for other for the dumping of dirt, gravel, concrete, things of that nature. And that probably goes back at least 50 years.
Del, just for my clarification, one of the stipulations that you mentioned was tying compliance and the special use to the Ross permit. So if
Yes.
any violations of the Ross, the EPA, really, it allows for us to pull the special use. Is that accurate?
That is correct. If all of the conditions are not met and maintained, the county board can pull the special use permit, which means if he does not keep a valid Ross permit, then he is in jeopardy of losing his special use permit. I would assume that if something were to occur where the Ross permit was in jeopardy, that the county board would give him time to correct it, just like the Ross permit would. But yes, all those conditions that are placed on it must be met at all times.
Chairman?
Yes, other questions?
Yeah, for Mr. Skimmerhorn. With if there is no special use permit issued
at this time, do operations cease out there?
I don't know that operations cease. We would take action with the state's attorney to stop the operation. He would be in violation of our zoning ordinance, and we would write tickets to that violation, and then we would take that case to a judge.
Okay, is he currently not in violation?
He does not have a special use permit, so he would currently be in violation. But since he applied for the special use permit, that stays all prosecution until these proceedings have ended. So we have not cited him for a violation as of yet. If the special use permit does not go through and he does not get approved, then we will start those proceedings.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Chairman,
Yes.
this is probably one of the hardest votes and one of the hardest decisions that I've made since my time on this board. And because I'm a strong property rights individual and believe that the owner of property should have the right to move forward in the direction that he can go, and as long as he doesn't negatively impact and impede the neighbors. This property use came after the houses were built on the surrounding property. I drove the property and looked at it. Mr. O'Connor's done a very nice job. But that crushing unit sets within 400 or 500 feet of a $400,000 house. Just a quick guess, I just saw it through the bushes. There's houses on all sides. The houses were there long before he ever started using this property for that purpose. And so my vote would be not to grant the special use permit for the very reasons that Mr. Skimmerhorn suggested we should. I think that it's a violation of item 1, item 2, item 5 or 3, and item 6. And that's 4 out of the 6 findings. And so on that purpose, and very hard to do, I'm saying that we should not vote in favor of this rezoning, or especially rezoning application.
The special use permit, not a rezoning.
Special use permit, correct.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Long.
I would join with Mr. Kinzinger. I would like to say that there's a real need for the service that Ron is providing. Old buildings, old concrete, construction materials need a place to go down and to be recycled. And that's definitely something of value. And I too am a person who believes in the property rights of owners to be able to make a living off of what they own. But I too also believe that the proximity to all of these residences that obviously existed long before the current use of that property existed, it risks their health and safety, I think, because of the dust. We don't know what's in that concrete. We don't know what is in the other construction material, and we're going to put this dust in the air. Also, the other thing that bothers me is the water runoff. You know, we here in Limestone live off of wells, unless you're in the area that was covered by the Shell disaster. So it concerns me that we're bringing 25 truckloads, that's what the picture says, 25 truckloads of some kind of liquid onto the property for watering pumpkins of an unknown origin. I think that seems odd to me. I too will be not in favor of this special use permit.
Mr. Chairman?
Can I state something, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, and I believe next was Mr. Featherling.
Okay.
I mean, Fairfield.
No, Aqua, Illinois does have a water line that runs down Van Siding Road to a new subdivision at the end that never got built. Whether the houses along Van Siding are connected to it, I do not know.
And just a point of clarification, Del, you said the nearest property was nearest house was 1,600 feet away?
That's what it measures out to be on the GIS. The nearest house is 1,610 feet away.
So it's not 400?
No.
Not true.
Okay, just want to make sure. I'm not disagreeing with your comments. I just want to get that on the record. And has there been, in the evidence submitted, was there any evidence, I didn't see it, that documented any, I don't know, chemicals in the water or in the land or anything like that? Any of the documents that were submitted? I didn't see anything.
No,
It was
nothing
just
was
supposition and maybes.
There were no testing reports submitted.
Okay, from either side.
From either side.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fairfield, I think you had something?
Yes, I was going to ask Mr. Kinzinger if he was able to look inside the pole barn, see what they're doing in there at all.
Mr. Chairman, I can answer that.
Yes, oh yeah, sure.
When I went by there, I did not take the liberty of getting out of my vehicle. The doors were open. There was no floor poured. I think that the building is not complete. It's just the shell. And I would stake my reputation on Mr. Skimmerhorn's report that it's 1,600 feet away. The crusher has got to be closer than that to the one house. But the building's not complete to my knowledge.
Sure. Anything else, Mr. Fairfield?
I have another question for Mr.
Sure.
Albert, you showed the picture of the where the yellow circle was in there.
Yeah.
Whose property is that just south of the circle? Looks like there's a home with.
Could you pull that back up and share that, Del?
I can. Let's see.
I'm just curious who that is, if that's another business or a residential.
Is he able to share? Okay.
Get to that. Can you see the screen?
Not yet.
Pretty sure I shared screen. How's that? How about that one?
It's not a bill.
I think I have too many PowerPoints up here. I keep clicking share screen. Okay, let's share that one. How's that?
Something's going
there?
on. That's it.
Yes, just south of there, right below the circle. Is that a residence or is that a?
No, that is not a residence. That is a tree nursery.
So down and to the left?
Yeah, down to the left. Yeah, just
Down and to the left.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah. That is just dirt. I think Mr. O'Connor actually turned some of his trucks around down there. But that is a neighboring property owned by someone else. I do not know their name. I do know that they came in a few years ago for a pole barn for a tree nursery. I believe that that property is used as a tree nursery.
Thank you.
Okay.
I don't have any other questions.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Featherling.
Yeah, no, I don't have it in front of me. I don't have my desk here. Could you tell us some of the special uses that are allowed into an agricultural district, that if someone builds a house on the farmland or on a piece of property out in a residential area, all the different types of things that could be built next door to them?
Sure. It's not a residential area. It's an agricultural area. But yes, give me just one moment. Also, to follow up on Mr. Fairfield's question about the pole barn is completed. The building permit has been closed on it. It has a dirt floor inside. I was in the pole barn. It is virtually sitting there empty right now. There were some pallets of, I believe, seed or fertilizer sitting inside there. It was some bags on pallets, but there's only 2 or 3 of those. It is virtually empty. At least it was when I was out there. I think it was in October out there. Special use permits in the A1 district. There are, how many of them? 29 different special use permits in the A1 district. Airports, animal farms, automobile wrecking and junkyards, carnival circuses, cemeteries, child care centers, churches, commercial radio, community centers, community residential homes, convalescent nursing homes, educational and institutional uses, slaughterhouses, dairy product processing, feed and grain sales, grain elevators, firewood sales, flea markets, golf courses, heliports, commercial landscape waste composting facilities, liquid propane sales, mining and quarrying and operations, recreational uses such as outdoor recreation and resorts, recycling, which this would fall under, sewage treatment plants, signs, substance abuse centers, kennels, and billboards.
Okay, Delbert, so I can assume that if I buy a piece of agricultural property out in agricultural area, that at any time, anything like that could go up on the property next to me.
With county board approval, yes. Special use permits are considered, the use is considered to be somewhat compatible with agriculture.
Yes.
The reason it's if it was compatible with agriculture, it's a permitted use. A special use is because it's somewhat compatible. In most cases, 90% of the time, they can operate without any issues. But because there may be issues, it's a special use permit which allows the board to scrutinize the specifics of that particular use, and also allows the board to put conditions on it in case there are issues that arise that they can mitigate. If you have a negative issue and you can impose a condition to turn it into a positive issue, that's what you would do with a special use permit. So if you look at the proposed findings and the proposed conditions, dust may be a problem. So one of the things you do is, how can we alleviate that issue? We put conditions on it that he must have a slow speed limit on the property, you know, and
yeah, we pretty much got all
operation and things of that nature to alleviate those issues. If there's other ways we can alleviate those issues, you can certainly suggest more conditions on the.
Okay, and if someone wages a complaint against the special use permit property, that comes back and forth.
I'm sorry, I did not hear you.
If someone wages a complaint to you, to your office about the property, can that require a question by the PZA or the Zoning Board of Appeals to respond to?
If someone complains about an issue on the property,
yes,
I would not necessarily take that to PZA. I would look to see if they are in violation or not.
Okay.
If they are, then the appropriate tickets would be issued.
Okay, thank you.
I would bring it to PZA if county board, if we needed to revoke the special use permit.
That's what I thought. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Question for Delbert. Delbert, did the O'Connor family start this business, or I thought I heard at some point in time they continued a business that had been long running there by the previous owner? Can you confirm that? Do you have information on that?
As far as I know, this particular business was started by the O'Connor family, but the property may have been used for similar or other types of uses that would be along these lines for several decades.
So this didn't just pop up overnight with the O'Connors?
The crushing of stone, maybe. I do not have that kind of history on it. I do know that if you look at the aerial photos, there have been piles of things back there for many years.
Okay, so this could have been going on.
I think some construction waste like dirt and gravel and concrete has been dumped back there for many years. Whether they processed it there, I can't say.
Okay, thank you, Delbert.
You're welcome.
Other questions, comments? Alrighty. Well, just as a member of the committee, and I'm running it for John today, but as a member, I appreciate the comments and the thoughts everybody had. I think they, with the changes that Delbert has recommended to this committee, it addressed everything that I had questions about and some things I didn't really consider. So I'm supportive. I just I think it meets all findings of fact in every case. So especially since this use has been going on for a while, it's known what has been there and what construction use has been going on at that property. And the owner has come forward and trying to get the proper zoning rather than us pushing him into this process. So those are the two things that were outstanding in my head that I have been solved by the findings of fact. Any other thoughts, comments? All righty, then if we're voting, an aye vote approves the special use, a no vote does not approve. Unless there's any more comments, we'll do a roll call. Roll call vote.
That again.
Yes, an aye vote means you approve of the special use, and a nay vote means you do not approve of the special use. And so we'll do a roll call here in a moment.
Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Tholen?
Aye.
Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Ms. Peters?
Nay.
Ms. Dunbar?
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger?
Nay.
Mr. Fairfield?
No.
Mr. Smith?
Nay.
Mr. Sponson?
Aye.
Mr. Dunnell?
Nay.
Mr. Long?
Nay.
Mr. Wheeler?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, the motion carries with a recommendation to the full board. And what was the count?
8-7.
8-7?
6.
8-6. So you'll see it again on the full board agenda with a recommendation from this committee. And we can have more discussions and questions at that point. I'm sure the board will as well. Moving on, ZBA case number 2002, request for rezoning from A1 to rural estate and variance to section 121, 286C1, driveway intervals on parcel generally situated, section 21 of Yellowhead Township. Petitioners are Harry and Deborah Stenhouse, property owners, and Jason and Sarah Stenhouse, applicants. Let's first get, is there a motion on the floor for this one to approve or disapprove? It's an
Dunbar.
approval from, I believe, Ms. Dunbar.
Yes.
Second,
John Featherling.
Mr. Featherling with a second. Dell?
All right. Grab my file here. I'll share the screen with you. Share. All right. This is a request to rezone 4 acres from A1 agriculture to RE rural estate located on 9000 North Road, just outside of the village of Grant Park. In fact, if you look at the map there, that green, kind of a olive green area is the village of Grant Park's limits. Jason and Sarah Stenhouse, well, let me back up. Harry and Deborah Stenhouse own 24 acres, which is the larger parcel. They have a home on there that they live in, and then there's a mobile home that Jason and Sarah Stenhouse live in. Jason and Sarah would like to have their own property, but yet still live close to the parents so that they can take care of them. So they would like to rezone the 4 acres outlined in red on this map to rural estate so that they could build their own home there, but yet still be next door to the parents. The mobile home would be removed from the remaining 20-acre site. To accomplish this, that parcel also does not meet the driveway spacing requirements, which of our ordinance, which allows for 1 driveway for every 330 feet of frontage. Unfortunately, the parent's driveway already has taken that, so they are also requesting a variance for driveway spacing to allow another driveway along 9000 North Road. Zoning Board heard this case on June 8th and voted 5-0 to recommend its approval.
Alrighty, we have the motion and a second to approve. Is there questions for Dell about this one? Alrighty, last time, and no questions? We'll move to roll call vote then.
Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Tholen?
Aye.
Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Ms. Peters?
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar?
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger?
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield?
Aye.
Mr. Smith? Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Sponson?
Aye.
Mr. Dennell?
Aye.
Mr. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Alrighty, moving on, ZBA case 2003, request for zoning from A1 to A2 on a parcel generally situated, section 18, Yellowhead Township. Petitioners are Michael and Ann Wyatt, property owners, and Zachary Barton, applicant. Is there a motion to approve or disapprove at this point?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve out of Mr. Smith, I believe. Second?
Second.
Mr. Kinzinger with a second.
Aye.
If you want to run through it real quick, Del?
Sure. Let me switch the screen back over. Share. All right, this is a 10-acre parcel located along 17,500 Road, also in Yellowhead Township. Mr. Barton would like to buy this property from Michael and Ann Wyatt and build his home on it. It's 10 acres. It's zoned A1 agricultural currently, which our ordinance requires 20 acres to build a home. So in order to accomplish this, it needs to be rezoned to A2 agriculture, which would allow the building of a home on a 10-acre parcel. Zoning board heard the case. Part of the testimony that was given is that this is marginal farmland at best and should be used for residential purposes rather than agricultural purposes. I do believe that Mr. Barton testified that the back portion of the 10 acres may still be farmed by a neighboring farmer. Zoning board heard the case on June 8th as well, and they also voted 5-0 to recommend the approval of this one.
Alrighty, questions for Del on this one? Last time, any questions? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Tholen?
Aye.
Ms. Polk? Ms. Polk?
Circle back.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Ms. Peters?
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar?
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger?
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Sponson?
Aye.
Mr. Dennell?
Aye.
Mr. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler?
Aye.
Ms. Polk?
Just no vote.
Motion carries.
Alrighty, thank you. Moving on, Riverside Country Estates, the 3rd edition. Del, why don't you give us some background before we get a motion on this, because it's not clear on the
Okay.
motion. On the
Let me
agenda.
switch my screen back over, if you don't mind. This is a minor subdivision request. Our Dr. Slutsky, who owns a former detention pond in Riverside Country Estates 1st edition. As a platted detention pond, that parcel is unbuildable as it is set aside and designated as a detention pond. It has not been used as a detention pond. There is a storm sewer line that was put in to help drain the subdivision along the north side of the lot, and this plat does recognize that with a 20-foot storm sewer easement along the north property line to allow access for repairs and maintenance of that line. As the property is privately owned, even though it is platted as a detention pond, it is privately owned by Mr. Slutsky, or Dr. Slutsky, excuse me, and he would like to make the parcel buildable, I believe possibly for sale or for incorporation into his home that he lives next door to this. Mr. Dave Tyson is the engineer on this project. and he is here to answer any questions of that nature that you might have.
Is there a motion first on the floor to get to the discussion part?
So moved.
So move.
We'll go with Mr. Payton with the motion, a second Mr. Featherling. All right, moving into any questions. Dave Tyson's here, if you have any regarding the engineering, the property in and of itself, or anything for Dell.
I should note, Mr. Chairman, that this went out for a 45-day review, and all surrounding property owners were notified, and we had no comments of any substance received. The only comment we had was from Mark Rogers at County Highway, who reminded us that we needed to have that storm sewer easement on the plat, which has been corrected.
So that's not a stipulation, that's already been addressed?
It has been addressed. If you approve this plat, you will be approving that storm sewer easement.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I've developed a few subdivisions, and engineers love to create detention ponds and take massive areas of property for detention ponds. This is the first one that I've ever heard where they want to take back a detention pond and make it a buildable lot. I'd like to know what changed and why we don't need the detention pond anymore.
I'll let Mr. Tyson handle that if you don't mind.
Yeah, Dave?
It was designated as a detention pond originally when Alan Lee was the original developer of this, and that's why it was saved or held at that time. It never was developed into a detention pond. The county never required it. The only thing the county did do is, I believe, is about 6 years ago, they put a new storm sewer along the north side of this land to convey the water from both Riverside Country Estates, a portion of that, and also Riverside Country Estates First Edition to the west, and that's what that 20-foot easement along the north side of it is for.
My question's this: detention ponds are to let water release at a controlled rate to avoid flooding of adjacent property owners. What does Riverside Country Estates have adequate detention for the area they've developed?
To my knowledge, Riverside Country Estates has no detention. Everything is done by roadside ditches and controlled by the size of the culverts under each of the driveways, and then the release culvert going out to the west.
So are there water issues? Anybody looked at the water issues out there to see if that will create a problem, or it should be used as a detention area?
It's been this way, Mr. Kinziger, for quite a few years. There was a water problem along the first edition of Riverside Country Estates, and that was corrected by the county in a big drainage project that was done, like I said, I think it's 5 years ago, it might be longer. And to take care of that, the water is always released in the same direction that it's being released right now, and I'm not aware of any problems or any complaints about that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Dave.
Yes, Mr. Featherling.
Dave, so the retention's being done by everybody's basically their ditch and their culvert size throughout the subdivision? Is that the case?
That's the way it works. I mean, I lived out in that subdivision for about 15 years, and that's what happens is the road ditches do fill up on real heavy rains. Since there's the culverts and the roads have been restricted, basically the water sits in the ditches for a period of time, and then it drains away. There was a problem where it wasn't draining away, and that's when they put this larger culvert and some new catch basins on the north side of what is the proposed Lot 1 of Riverside Country Estates 3rd Edition.
Okay, so you're agreeing with that it's adequate as it is right now?
Yes, that's the way it has been. Actually, that's the way it has been approved by the county and been working for years right now.
Thank you, Dave.
Other questions for Dell or Dave?
I just have a statement, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Last night, I actually received a call from someone out in Diversitech, and there is a detention pond out there that is not being maintained. It's owned privately, and it's not being maintained. It flooded his house this year. He did contact Dell about it, who recommended he contact the owner. The owner doesn't really see a need to do anything to help the situation out. The detention pond there also, when it gets full, floods onto the Mantino golf course. So it's not even doing, its job there. So, my comment is possibly if we take this detention pond away from this subdivision and there are problems down the line, there's no going back to get the property back, to get the detention pond in to alleviate any future problems. So that's just my statement. So I think that the property should be maintained for a detention.
This is only a detention pond on paper right now.
Is there any other comments, questions for Dell?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
For Mr. Tyson. What's the topography, or is there a lower elevation for this detention area? And if it's buildable, will that elevation have to be raised?
No, it will not have to be raised. The elevation of that ground right now is basically consistent with both Mr. Slutsky's or Dr. Slutsky's property to the south and the property to the north. It has never been developed into a detention pond at all. And so the elevation is what it exists.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I just want to make sure. So it's never been a pond. It was just put on the paper that it was a pond, and there are no flooding issues as it stands right now on that area. And anything that was there was solved by drainage on the other side of the road that was installed by the county?
It was solved by the drainage on the other side of the road, as well as a storm sewer that was put along the north side of this property.
I see. Okay.
That's why Mr. Rogers wanted to have a 20-foot easement.
I see.
Initially we had a 10-foot easement in there. He wanted a 20-foot easement for maintenance reasons, so we changed it from 10 foot to 20 foot.
I see. So we're not taking anything out. I see. I just want to make sure that was clear.
No, it never existed as a detention pond.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, but adding a house to that would change the amount of water that would be held onto the lot. It would add to the burden of more runoff. Just my comment.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay, we have the motion in the second. It'll be a roll call, please.
Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Tholen? Mr. Tholen?
Chris? Mr. Tholen, do you have a vote? Just circle back.
Okay. Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Ms. Peters? Aye. Ms. Dunbar?
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger?
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Sponson?
Aye.
Mr. Dunnell? Mr. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler?
Aye.
Mr. Tholen?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, motion carries. Thank you. Under transportation, we have updates from the Transportation Development Division Manager. Ben?
I'm here, sir. And thank you for this opportunity. I guess at one of maybe the previous CBA meeting or maybe a county board meeting, Chairman Wheeler had alluded to some of the programs we look into at the staff level. And I've got a couple that came up that aren't necessarily programs that the county would apply for, but I want the members of the committee and the board to be aware of. It's kind of, we work towards digital under the Federal Commerce Commission. There's something called Lifeline, and it's a individual application to Lifeline program under the under USAC, and that allows an individual user to be discounted up to it's like $10 per month for telco services. So if you've got internet services or cell phone services, depending on whether you qualify under the program, any individual can try and apply. It's just it's a very simple. So I'll send a quick summary of these to Chairman Wheeler so we can distribute to all of you. If you've got any residents you want to share it with, it's a great opportunity if they qualify to get a little bit of savings. The other one that came through from Department of Commerce on the 14th, we get a new mailer from the team, the Regional Economic Development team. I apologize, my mic was covered with my paper, but Illinois Department of Employment Security and Department of Commerce have partnered together to create what's Get Hired Illinois, and they're asking for any employers that are looking for employees to, and then employees looking for jobs to use that as a single access portal for jobs for kind of getting through the recovery. So it's a new platform. Again, I'll send individual info on these to each of you, but it's supposed to be a little better, a little cleaner resource than the existing portal. The Payment Protection Program through SBA still has $130 billion in it. Applications are still, qualifying applications will be taken through June 30th. So again, any businesses that are that are needing of funds, we're trying to. It's their responsibility as an individual business to apply to the SBA. It's not something we would handle at the county level, but just keep in mind there's still plenty of funds left on that program. From kind of the Alliance side, we've got a new dialogue with EDA surrounding the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. Our Economic Development Strategy expired in 2019. So we're looking for a funding mechanism and funding opportunity with EDA under some of their new economic assessment programming. So we will be likely the fiscal agent for this one as the responsible entity to look for funds for updating our 5-year economic development strategy for the entire county and really the region. That's all I have as far as an update, just for kind of an informal update. If it's a pleasure of the committee, we can move on to the rural transit update. I've got the new numbers for third quarter. It's a little over 10,000 trips, and what's really cool about those 10,000, 6,500 of them are the commuter trips between Kankakee, Aroma Park, and our Sun River Terrace and the Village of Moments. So about 2/3 of our trips are people going for jobs, which is very awesome. Total program expenses about $160,000. That's about 120 operating and 40,000 administrative expenses. A highlight for the committee: we've submitted 4 grants. So we submitted our annual 5311, our annual downstate operating, our CARES Act operation, and our operational funds, and then our rebuild. So in 1 year, we've submitted four grants for funding. So that is standard funding like we typically would do, and then new vehicles and radios, as you may remember. This probably is most for Chairman Wheeler, but everybody should know we received a grant about 2 years ago for bus shelters for that commuter route that 6,500 users are using each quarter. We've received a new IDOT manual, so we're moving forward in the procurement steps to get a bus shelter placed in the Village of Moments and in Sun River Terrace that will tie into the shelters in downtown Kankakee here at the proposed transfer station site. So it'll be a little warmer, a little drier for users to use it on those days that are a little more inclement. And then so we've got just kind of an update. Just this is for the public, if anybody needs to know. Commuter trip is $2 round trip. So anybody that's commuting for the Moments line, and we run 4 to 5 p.m. And it's a great opportunity to get back and forth to work running every day. And then the demand response rides. So that could be from a location you define to any location you need to go within the county, which is traditional transit service, are $4 a ride. So that, again, it's public transportation, can be used for anything, but it's a very low cost alternative to for some users versus owning their own vehicles. And that's the transit update.
Ben, do you want to fill the committee on the CSL new entrance? We had a conference call with the management team there and the new plant manager, if you will. You want to fill them in on that?
Yeah, so on Friday, Chairman Wheeler, Mr. Rogers, and I had a call with Mr. Gonzalez, Roy Pure, who's our government affairs contact, and Maureen Powell, who's kind of our front person for outreach from CSL. They still have some landscaping to be done at the entrance, but the lighting is up and operational. The guard tower is up and installed, and they've been utilizing that entrance exit. So that will be for public and private entries. So when post-COVID, when the facilities taking visitors, all visitor entries to CSL will be happening through that main entrance, and they will still utilize the existing entrance off of Armour Road. So they've, I don't want to say exponentially, but they've streamlined their exits for their employees, and this is a big boon. If you work there, you're not sitting 20 minutes, half hour trying to get out of your job every day. So that's up and running. It's what it needs to be. Obviously, as the project comes to a conclusion, we'll do a little landscaping out there and pretty it up a little bit. But it's an awesome project that took a good bit of heavy lifting, maybe some more heavy lifting than it should have needed. But certainly a big thanks to the chairman, to our lobbyists, to this committee for allowing us staff to go out there and pound the pavement and get the job done. But we're very pleased that it's up and operational.
Now that the new entrance is just employees only, visitors will use the other entrance on Armour Road. Is that what I remember hearing?
No, I think the new entrance will be the visitor entrance. So that'll be the full entrance. Maybe I got that twisted.
I think it's the other way around, okay. But we'll verify that because they haven't officially opened it. But I believe what they wanted to do is have visitors go in the other way, and then employees just use that entrance, or both. Employees use both, but visitors only go to one. Okay. So yeah, we don't want to definitely misrepresent that, so we'll clarify and get it back to you. The other thing is we've been working with IDOT District 3 on the Armour Road Route 50 intersection, and the associated improvements to put traffic lights up where the stop signs are by the entrance of Denny there and time all that. And so we don't have any real updates. It's in phase 3 engineering, which is basically the funding and jurisdiction side of this. Bourbonnais Township is going to take jurisdiction of that stretch of road. They're the sponsoring entity, if you will, but it's still, CSL is obviously still in the county. So that is moving forward at a glacial pace, but once it does hit, it will be fast and really moving quickly, potentially to link up with the bridge project that is down the street from there that goes over the railroad tracks heading west. So, we use the joke, pull the Band-Aid off all at once. Have both projects going, so we spend the least amount of time being disrupted. Hopefully, to be able to bid that at the end of this year and then look at construction in the 21 season. Am I misrepresenting anything, Ben?
No, that's correct.
Okay. Just that's still moving forward. It's just once it hits, it will hit. And everybody's pushing hard to get that done. We've been given $8.5 million for this project in the capital bill. That was a hard work by a lot of people to get it in there. And we're appreciative, and we want to make sure that when the time comes that we're able to take advantage. So I just wanted to update the committee on those two things because those are two big planning issues. Also, Hopkins Park, we were on a call with leadership at NICOR and Senator Joyce's staff and Mayor Hodge. You want a quick update on NICOR from a planning perspective?
Yeah, so as it relates to the project, we talked a couple times about several phases of the project. It's our intention at the staff level with the chairman's signature to submit a grant application to Department of Commerce for what we're calling phase 1. So that would be about 440 homes could receive direct service. I know that Senator Joyce had announced previously he received $1 million capital appropriation for this project. So a combination of DCO Rebuild Illinois grant, which is what the intergovernmental agreement that the county board approved at the last month, or I guess at this month was, and then the senators $1 million of capital appropriation and NICOR funds will fund the project. The intent for that We have 4 active bills, 2 in the House and 2 in the Senate. As those move through, Senator Joyce has indicated he's attempting to get the Senate bill on veto session, but either way, we'll be shooting for either veto session or the 102nd General Assembly to take action to fully flush out that project and make it the maximum opportunity for the region. But this allows us to get continue the momentum, get the project moving, get the main line installed, while then flushing out exactly how the details of the further reaching of the project would work. So it's moving pretty fast. We've got 13 days. We've got pretty much the pieces we need. I actually have another NICOR call today with kind of our point lead on infrastructure and development, and she's going to give me a final update from their end on final costs and a couple mapping pieces. I know this isn't the finance committee, but I do want to give a big thanks to both Steve and Chris in the finance department. I asked them for something yesterday, and by 8:30 this morning, it was in my email. I mean, they're really quickly turning things around for us so we can get it done. And not that I wouldn't expect them to do that, but I really certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, this is this grant opportunity is not just a little bit. It's a $5 million ceiling, I believe. And,
yes.
And the $1 million Senator Joyce had set aside was to get it from the main into the homes and the conversion into the homes. I believe that was the way that was laid out. So it's not enough to just bring the pipeline into Hopkins Park. You have to get it to the homes. Then you also have to have customers, and that's another thing that's being worked on by NICOR. So all in all, this first step is the grant opportunity that could happen potentially before veto session when the Senate bills start going through. So I don't want to say it's an insurance policy. It is something that could, in fact, be our best bet to get phase 1 done and totally paid for, and it meets all the rubrics that qualifies it to be a major project. I think everybody wants this to happen, and now it's a statewide initiative because there's other areas, I believe East Peoria is one of them, where they want to do something similar to take natural gas to underserved areas. So thanks to Ben for just bird dogging this, and he's got a lot of work between now and the end of the month. I just wanted the committee to know, because this falls under our planning department a little bit, and sometimes you don't get all the details, how the sausage is made, so to speak. So just so he's able to, you can call him directly and he can fill you in on any details as we go through this. Anything, Ben? Anything else?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Featherly.
I'd like to thank Ben and you and your extra work put in and the extra time you guys put into getting this thing, the gas line, squared away. And the Armour Road interchange is a desperate need for our county.
Yeah, they're 2 primal development projects, and you're welcome. It's something that, well, it's long overdue, and I've been trying to get something done for 10 years, and I can't thank. We wouldn't be anywhere without Senator Joyce on this. We'd be just banging our fist on the table. He's actually made it happen, and he deserves a lot of the credit for the Hopkins Park, getting it to the point of being funded. Exactly. And Lindsay Parkhurst as well, putting her bill into the House. They're working together as a team, and those bills mirror each other. So hopefully there won't be any reconciliation between the two. Hopefully both of them will come through the House and the Senate as is. So.
Great job.
Yeah. Thanks all. If there's any questions about that, let us know. Appreciate it, Ben, unless there's anything else. I put you on the spot. I apologize. Not really. Moving on, I guess, is there any old business for the committee? New business, 2 openings on ZBA.
Mr. Chairman, that's only 1 opening.
Oh, okay. 1 opening on ZBA, 3 openings on the Regional Planning Commission. If you know anybody who would want to be part of this group, they are the vetting arm of the county board. They look at new projects when things need to be updated. I want to say, I'm trying to think of something, when we need to update our solid waste plan, which probably has to be coming up here soon, Del, I would imagine. I think we have to do it like every 5 years.
But actually that's changed a bit.
Okay.
The legislation was only good for like 15 years, so.
Okay, all right. But it's things like that, to be doing work to bring things and make recommendations to the county board based on things that come before them. So it's kind of a fun committee. If you know anybody who wants to be part of that, please tell them to reach out or send them an application. Kelly can get you the app to be on it. I think, Chad, you're still on that, correct?
Yes, that's correct, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman. And I might point out too that other items such as the agritourism zoning ordinance began in the RPC. So a lot of things begin there and then move upward, but that's kind of the group that sees it at its beginning.
Right. Yep. It's community based. You know, it's people out from all corners of the community. We could use any input we can get. Well, at least 3 spots. Quorums become an issue, so that's why we need to make sure that it's a full house. So, and then also we have one opening on the GIS committee for a county board member. If you know a guy or gal, as they say, you know, please let us know. We need to get that spot filled. It's been about 6 months, so I need a board member. Otherwise, if you don't show up to a meeting, I'll appoint you. That's the way it works. So, beyond that, any other comments under new business? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
That's who was the motion from?
John Featherling.
Mr. Featherling, second by Mr. Long. All those in favor say aye.
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 Oh, how about a roll call?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, where you at, John?
Sorry.
Mr.
Gotta
Featherling?
go to the bathroom.
Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Tholen?
Aye.
Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Ms. Peters?
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar?
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger?
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Mr. Dennell?
Aye.
Mr. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Have a great day.
See ya.
This is-
Okay.
Appreciate it.